Good evening, people. Welcome back to another episode of Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We like to expand our conversation to include the history of the game, and the past, the present, and the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. And remember now, go to your favorite smart device, download the SportsZone Chicago station, and you can watch on Roku. Yes, SportsZone Chicago is now on Roku. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can listen to my show, our flagship show, Sean and Maya in the Morning, and countless others. Remember, you can keep up with breaking sports news of your favorite team. If you miss something, just go to YouTube and download the channel, search SportsZone Chicago. But when you do that, we need everyone, and I mean everyone, to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can now be found in the iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Store, and once again, on your favorite smart device using Roku. Now we'd like to dive into this week's episode called MLS Next Pro and the USA Soccer Pyramid. So let's talk about soccer in the United States. Exactly over 100 years ago, in the year 1921, the American Soccer League was founded, bringing the United States' very first professional men's soccer league. So to give you more information about this, I want to share this video brought to us by Hitsberry on the formation of the United States Soccer League.
The trinity of American sports, American football run by the NFL, baseball run by the MLB, and basketball run by the NBA, have been America's favorite pastime since what seems like an eternity, along with the NHL. Major League Soccer is about to change that. Although soccer was introduced very early in the 19th century, it failed to take root and was relegated to the bench for most of the time. The popularity of soccer in America has always had its ups and downs, but it looks like it's finally cemented itself in the American landscape and is growing steadily every year. According to the Wall Street Journal, more U.S. kids between ages 6 and 18 play organized soccer than baseball or American football, trailing only slightly behind basketball. Another favorite pastime, American television, has been streaming English Premier League matches regularly, and in 2012, 30 million viewers tuned into the matches. It was unheard of for a foreign league to be aired on national television, much less have people tuning in to watch it. At a time when all the major leagues have been losing viewership to digital platforms or losing viewers outright, only MLS can claim to be growing every year. MLS cable viewership increased by 4% in 2017 and 6% in 2018, with an average cable viewership of 276,000. Even though it lags far behind the NBA, the NFL, and MLB in the raw number of viewership, these giants are losing viewing numbers spectacularly after 50 years of unstoppable growth, while soccer is growing. Since 1996, MLS, Major League Soccer, and soccer in general, has slowly ingrained itself in the national landscape. So, how and when did soccer really start in America? What are its origins? Let's get right into it. But before the kickoff, take some time to subscribe to Hitsberry and ring the bell as well. Modern soccer entered the States in the 1850s with immigrants from Italy, Germany, Ireland, and Scotland, who brought the game with them. Soccer got its first major boost in the 1920s with the creation of the American Soccer League. The league attracted foreign players by offering high-paying factory jobs and was the first competitive league that could hope to challenge the European leagues and their teams. By the 1930s, America was competing in the World Cup. Then came the Great Depression, and the ASL folded after its 1932 season. This began American soccer's darkest period, and it wasn't until 1968, when the North American Soccer League was formed, that the interest in the sport was renewed. The NASL ushered in a revival of soccer in the U.S., and the best players from Europe and South America all came to play in the league. And the best of them all, Pelé himself, came out of retirement. New York Cosmos president Clive Toye told Pelé, quote, "Listen, We want to make soccer, football, as big as it is in Europe and South America. The three-time World Cup winner played for the New York Cosmos, and when he did, major stadiums were packed to capacity with fans clamoring to watch the world's greatest player play for their club. Detractors, of which there were many, were promptly silenced, and the roots of soccer were firmly planted in the psyche of a new generation of Americans. Many other notable soccer stars also made their way into the league, like Germany's Beckenbauer and Brazil's Carlos Alberto. During Pelé's last match for the Cosmos, the giant stadium was packed to capacity with a U.S. record crowd of over 70,000 people. He even received a plaque from President Carter which read, quote, "Pelé has elevated the game of soccer to heights never before attained in America, and only Pelé, with his status, incomparable talent, and beloved compassion, could have accomplished such a mission. The United States of America is deeply grateful." The growing popularity of the sport was halted in its tracks with the demise of the league. Overexpansion was a huge factor in the downfall of the young league. The absence of a national soccer league made it difficult, but the men's national team continued to compete at the highest level. When, due to certain unforeseen circumstances, the 1994 FIFA World Cup was held in the U.S., Americans flocked in huge numbers to the stadiums to watch the best countries vie for the biggest sporting title in the world, the World Cup. The national team's performance in the World Cup was commendable, and it introduced the game to a broader American audience. It wasn't until MLS started in 1996 that soccer came back as we know it. MLS and the NASL paved the way for the acceptance of the game in America. Before that, soccer was considered by many detractors to be a commie game or a game played only by immigrants, and only players who couldn't make it in baseball or football went into it. Now the game is being played by kids throughout the states. Its viewing numbers are promising, and the U.S. national team is a strong regional contender on the world stage of soccer. Soccer is now a grassroots sport, with kids in every part of America growing up playing and loving the game. MLS has also been on a steady upward trend among adults, and soccer detractors have slowly faded into oblivion. Now, America is indeed finally in love with the beautiful game. I'll leave you with a fun fact. Native Americans had soccer-like matches in a mile-long field with up to 1,000 players playing at the same time. It was called Pasakwakahawag, which roughly translates to kicking the ball. Native Americans would paint their faces to play, and though the game would often lead to grave injuries, it was considered an honor to participate. After the match, it was customary to have a large feast attended by both teams. Some even believe it was played during the first Thanksgiving dinner. What place does soccer hold in the future of American sports? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, leave us a thumbs up. And if you loved it, leave us a sub.
Thank you so much from Hitsbury for bringing us that video. So just to break it down, so in the early 1850s, around 1850 to 1880, that's when America was going through its quote-unquote industrial revolution. And not to remember, at this time, the Civil Wars ended in 1865. So a lot of that labor was excluded due to the color of their skin and not being quote-unquote citizens at the time. Remember, at first, you had the Freedmen's Bureau was ran by Colonel Howard, and people of African descent were freedmen, and then became citizens after a long process. So to get people to work in these factories, it was sort of like, think of like how colleges get students to transfer now. So you would get top European players, if not the whole team, to come over to work in a factory in Pennsylvania or New York somewhere, and just kind of cherry pick. And that's how they got the top talent from Europe over here. Also, at the end, you see how soccer was defunct in the United States for quite some time until late 1960s, when the North American Soccer League came up, and that league folded because people got greedy too soon and tried to add too many teams at one time. So now, after that video, all those moments kind of ignited decades of disorganization within the country's professional soccer pyramid. And when I say the soccer pyramid, means starting at the top with the highest professional league, all the way down to the bottom where you have grassroots and interscholastic play, where there was a jumble of divisions, leagues, and levels that had coexisted with little attempt at all of coordination. This organizational chaos had trickled down and congested the pipeline between youth and professional soccer, which didn't allow growth. Young players lacked clear and direct pathways to their dreams of playing for the United States national team or a professional league if they had one at the time. In the 1920s, when American men's professional soccer was in its infancy, remember in the early or the late 1800s, people came over to work in the factories from Europe. But it began to grow rapidly in the 1920s. There was an argument between the American Soccer League, and the United States Football Association, igniting the infamous American Soccer Wars. Now, if you ask a lot of people what the American Soccer Wars were, their response may have to do with the 1969 war between El Salvador and Honduras, but we're talking about something completely different. They probably won't mention the 1928-29 struggle between the U.S. Football Association and the American Soccer League over control of the sport in this country. But that was the original soccer war. Now, this issue was between the two organizations, and it centered on participation by the American Soccer League teams in the National Challenge Cup. That name has now been changed to the U.S. Open Cup, and the battle really was over the question of which of them would be controlling organization of soccer in the United States. So think of it like there's no clear-cut NFL, two organizations vying to be the top league in that specific sport. So the American Soccer League had been upset for several years by the scheduled difficulties the National Challenge Cup caused and had boycotted the tournament previously in 1924 and 25. However, in 1927, the United States got into hot water with FIFA over the signing by American Soccer League teams of players who were under contract to European teams. Remember, it was real rogue back then, similar to boxing. So now the United States Football Association president, Andrew Brown, he makes an emergency trip to the FIFA Congress in Finland, which was in 1927, and he reached a compromise that fended off moves sought by Austria and Hungary, the countries from which players had been poached, to penalize the United States. So what the European teams were doing was, since the United States were bringing people over to work in the factories, they were then trying to poach them back. And Austria and Hungary were two of the notable countries that were doing this. I remember there was a lot of Germans in Western Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania at the time. The quote-unquote cheesesteak is a German dish. The suffix Berg means city in Germany. So your Harrisburg, your Pittsburghs, all those have German influence. Then we also must remember during the American Revolution, the Hessians, which was Germany at the time, fought and trained the revolutionaries. So you had General von Steuben and his troops. So there's a lot of German history in Pennsylvania. The last part I would like to bring in is, remember, Germany is called Deutschland. So people mispronounce that and called it Dutch. So the Pennsylvania Dutch are actually from Germany. So your Dutch oven, pierogies, a lot of these things, these delicacies from Eastern Europe, all come from these immigrants coming to work in these factories. Now, however, the United States Football Association's bowing to foreign authority inspired some American Soccer League owners to desire to free themselves from the limitation imposed on them by the USFA and FIFA's European leaders. So this is no different than what the Premier League teams are talking about now. They want to operate independently, very similar to what, again, college football is looking at. If the Big Ten and SEC overlapping shows from last week, if the Big Ten and SEC decide to leave the NCAA altogether. So all this is kind of paramount. This was particularly true of the New York Nationals owner, Charles Stoneham, who also known the New York Giants baseball team, and wanted to see the American soccer run more like baseball, and that means without European interference. So in the summer of 1928, Stoneham proposed a series of moves to the other American Soccer League owners, the main one of which was that the ASL remove its teams from the National Challenge Cup. The ASL was an East Coast league, and among the other things Stoneham proposed was that within a few years, they started a Midwestern division in the ASL, and that a final between the winners of the two divisions replaced the National Challenge Cup as a true champion of American soccer. So again, this is another power play to make the ASL the preeminent national or professional soccer league in the United States. The ASL accepted Stoneham's proposal and ordered its teams to withdraw from the cup. So if you look at this picture right here, this is a player from Bethlehem Steel. So 3 SL teams who opposed the proposal were Bethlehem Steel, the New York Giants, and the Newark Skeeters. They all refused to withdraw from the cup and were suspended from the league. These 3 teams were based around, locations where factories are at. And obviously, the one in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Bethlehem Steel, the New York Giants, and the Newark Skeeters. A skeeter was a term used to talk about people, I believe, that worked in the mills at the time, and they all refused to withdraw from the cup because their owners, again, it was a dichotomy in the owners in regards to the ASL. Some wanted to split, some wanted to stay, and they felt like staying would make their brand better, and they could be the de facto number 1 league. This resulted in the league being suspended by the United States Football Association, and henceforth the soccer war was on. So during this 1928-29 season, the ASL played without those 3 teams who joined several semi-pro New York teams and forming a new league called the Eastern Soccer League. Now, support for the United States Football Association from other national federations, plus the economic disadvantages the ASL faced as an outlaw league, eventually convinced the ASL that it could win this fight and they should yield. So again, this is very similar to the first USFL with Donald Trump and trying to compete against the NFL at the same time. It didn't quite work out. So the soccer was settled in early October of 1929. How was it settled? The American Soccer League, which has already begun its seasons starting in 1920 to 1930, halted that year during World War I. Now, the full league was put back together, and for that season played under the name of the Atlantic Coast League. Now, the damage done to the ASL might have been temporary, but again, the fact remains that the end of one problem was quickly followed by the start of another, and that was a stock market crash that triggered the Great Depression that occurred 2 weeks after the 2 leagues settled. The original ASL lasted only a few more seasons, and in 1933 was replaced by a scaled-down semi-pro version. Now, the semi-pro version had smaller budgets. There was no attempt to recruit European stars to work in American factories, partly because so many had moved over from Europe already, and then there was a growing presence in America, not only with these first-generation Americans having families, but other people catching on for the love and the spirit of the beautiful game. Now, whether the original ASL would have survived the Depression if the soccer war didn't happen, that is uncertain. However, some money that might have been invested in American soccer was scared away by the infighting between the 2 leagues. But by the early 1930s, there wasn't much money around anymore to be scared of anyway, again, due to the Great Depression and then the alphabet programs that will follow. As for the United States Football Association, since renamed United States Soccer Federation, which is the national governing body of United States soccer, this was not the last time that they had faced challenges to its authority over the total landscape of American soccer. Now, it basically stayed this way, like the video stated, until the 1960s, when the 1966 FIFA World Cup. Now, this was the first World Cup ever broadcast in color, and it revitalized the country's interest in soccer. But this time, you got the United States Soccer Association forming, as well as the National Professional Soccer League as well. And these leagues picked up right where the last soccer war left off, with both sides again feeling betrayed and alleging conspiracy, corruption, and collusion as they both fought for the number 1 title. Now, after 2 years, the 2 leagues agreed to be to a merger, and it was regrettingly. So if you look at this picture right here, we can talk about the famous North American Soccer League. Now, this is a picture of the North American Soccer League and its greatest player, Edmondson Arantes, also known as Pele, the Afro-Brazilian three-time World Cup winner, player of the year several times, and is known as the greatest footballer that has ever lived. Now, the North American Soccer League, or the NASL, was a top-level major professional soccer league in the United States and Canada, and they operated between 1968 and 1984. Now, a surprisingly large North American TV audience, over 1 million for the 1966 World Cup, resulted in a documentary film being made after it called Goal. They didn't really expect that much viewership for this 1966 World Cup, but I guess having it in color and Pele playing, people decided to watch at that time. So after that documentary, American sports investors thought there was an untapped market for the sport, not only in the United States, but Canada as well. Notice every time soccer is involved, the North American Soccer League, as well as Major League Soccer, they always employ teams in United States and Canada moving forward, just like this World Cup that's coming to the United States after the one in Qatar. I think there'll be games in all three countries in North America, which will be Canada, United States, and Mexico. So sort of like a NAFTA league per se, based off the North American Free Trade Agreement of the 90s. Now, in 1967, the two professional soccer leagues started in the United States, the FIFA-sanctioned United Soccer Association, which consisted of the entire European and South American teams that were brought to the United States and given local names, as well as the unsanctioned outlaw National Professional Soccer League teams. Now, while the USA had a FIFA sanction at the time, the foreign teams, which were rebranded as American for the summer of 1967, viewed the league a little more than a training exercise for their offseason, and most did not field their best players, again, because they looked at it as second class. The NPSL had a 2-year national television contract in the U.S. with the CBS television network, and what that kind of failed because officials tried to they wanted it to operate, again, not like European soccer, but like baseball. So for the NPSL, that league instructed officials to whistle fouls and delay play to allow CBS to insert commercials. Now, with advanced technology, we see those electronic scoreboards that broadcast commercials. We also see the announcer say, "This segment of the game is brought to you by," etc. So they've changed that. The ratings for these matches were unacceptable, even by weekend daytime standards. And I think at that time they should show kung fu movies on Saturdays. And the arrangement with CBS was terminated. Now, Bill McPhail, the head of CBS Sports, attributed the NPSL's lack of TV appeal to empty stadiums with few fans and to undistinguished foreign players who were unfamiliar with the American soccer audience. Now, the two leagues merged on December 7th of 1967 to form the North American Soccer League. Now, the NASL began the 1968 season with 17 of the 22 teams that had participated the prior year in 1967. Now, a lot of those teams folded, and you had 5 redundant teams in cities where both the USA and NPSL had operated previously. Now, the teams relied, again, heavily on foreign talent, including the Brazilian Vava, who was one of the leading scorers of the 1958 and 62 World Cups. International friendlies also were included in this, including victories against Pele's Santos and against English champions Manchester City. So teams in the North American Soccer League would play international games against Santos, which is a club in Brazil. That was the club Pele broke into when he was 15. And also against Manchester City of the English, it wasn't the Premier League at that time, the English Soccer League, again, trying to get the league to get more relevant. And you see the same things are happening now when you'll see Arsenal take an American tour or play against the MLS All-Stars. This next picture right here, again, is the Afro-Brazilian Pele, who was considered the best football player that ever lived. Pele won 3 World Cups with Brazil and is the only player in history to do so and became the face of the North American Soccer League. Now, this video right here will explain the North American Soccer League and some of Pele's greatest goals, and is brought to us by Luz de Ira.
The trinity of American sports.
you so much. Again, that video was brought to us by Luz de Ira. If you saw the video, you see that Pele, he was retired, and he came back to play for the New York Cosmos. So he's not in his prime, and you see he's playing just like the players of the day. He's hitting the ball on a volley, bicycle kicks, his ambidextrousness, shooting with both feet, where he dribbles around defenders. His style of play definitely relates to the day, and you see what he brought to the league. Now, the North American Soccer League survived mostly due to Pele, as well as Beckenbauer and the rest of the New York Cosmos until 1984, when only 2 of the league's 24 teams expressed an interest to play the following season. At that point, the league collapsed, falling victim to its own greed and overexpansion, with owners trying to get teams too quickly. Now, I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll discuss the next era of United States soccer, along with MLS Next Pro, excuse me. I'm Jamar Harp, and you are watching Sports 101.
Progressive presents the Sports Flash on the SportsZone Chicago. At the Major League Baseball All-Star Game in Los Angeles on Tuesday, the American League beat the National League 3-2. The National League led it 2-0 after the first. Mookie Betts singled in a run, then Paul Goldschmidt went deep. In the fourth, the American League rallied for 3 runs. Giancarlo Stanton with a 2-run homer, followed by a Byron Buxton solo shot. Alabama Crimson Tide head coach Nick Saban spoke during Tuesday's Southeastern Conference Media Day about name, image, and likeness deals for players. He says that guidelines are needed.
And I'm all for players having the opportunity to create whatever value they can create for themselves. But I do think that the concerns are, there has to be some guidelines that sort of protect competitive balance.
For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the SportsZone Chicago.
Staples has everything for school at great prices. So this year you won't go back to school. You'll be ready to move forward and master 5th grade math.
I can't do this. It's impossible.
Not you, Dad, your daughter. Staples will help her move forward.
Right.
Right now, Staples comp books and number 2 pencils are just 50 cents each. Plus, 2 pocket paper folders are only 25 cents each. Everything on your list at amazing prices. Staples, we're not going back. We're going forward to school. Ends 8/27 in store only, limit 30.
Wendy's knows cold and soggy fries are the worst.
So soggy.
That's why we're serving up hot and crispy fries all day, every day.
And all night until close.
With natural cut potatoes, sea salted to perfection.
Show me that potato skin.
Wendy's hot and crispy aren't like other fries. We're your dream fry. Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's hot and crispy fries.
Guaranteed to be hot and crispy. If yours aren't, bring them back and we'll replace them.
Welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We talk about the game from the people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101, Sean and Matt in the Morning, and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, Instagram at SportsZone Chicago, and now you can go to your favorite smart device and download the SportsZone Chicago channel on Roku. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, and Roku. Moving forward, we'd like to go further in our discussion and now discuss the USA Soccer Pyramid. Now, before we do that, I want to show you this video brought to us by Become Elite that describes the USA Soccer Pyramid. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101.
What's going on, guys? So I'm back with my annual video where I discuss the professional football system here in America. It's so sad that I have to make a new one of these videos every single year, but every single year, stuff changes. New leagues pop up, new leagues fold, leagues jump up a division, leagues drop a division. It's just been crazy over the last 5-10 years. Hopefully one day I will make one of these videos and it will be my last, and we'll have some stability in the football pyramid here in America. And, maybe even one day we might have promotion and relegation between the leagues, but we'll see. But until then, here's the professional football pyramid for 2022. I'll roll the intro and then I'll do a deep dive into every single one of these leagues and talk about attendances, talk about average salaries, and kind of go into them a little bit more. Now, before we start, I just want to thank Halt's Boots for sending me out another pair of the Vapor 11s. I'm just about to start preseason with the Charleston Battery, and these are going to be fantastic to have. Thank you so much. Full disclosure, this video is not sponsored. I'm not getting paid anything to say this, but I did get these boots sent out to me for free. Halt's Boots has been supplying me with these Vapor 11s for the last 2 years. He's just been amazing. I'm just so thankful that he's always been able to find the greatest pair of boots and send them out to me so I can continue to play at my highest possible level with those boots. It just really means a lot. So if you guys are looking for some discounted boots, or you guys are looking for some older models of some boots, then I highly suggest going to his Instagram, giving him a follow, and then going out and checking his website. Anyway, let's just hop into the pyramid. At the very top, we have the MLS. The MLS, or Major League Soccer, has been around for a while now, and for this 2022 season, they'll have 28 teams competing in an Eastern and Western Conference. The average attendance in the MLS for the 2021 season was right around 16,910 fans per game, and players here, non-designated players here, can expect to make anywhere between 63,000 at the minimum up to 612,000 per year. However, each team is allowed what's called designated players, and these designated players can be paid anything. Currently, the highest paid designated player is Carlos Vela, and he's making $6.3 million per year. The average MLS player can expect to make $418,000 per year, but because of these DPs, because of the designated players that skew this a little bit higher, it's better to look at the median, and the median MLS player makes about $200,000 per year. Underneath the MLS, we have the USL Championship, and for the 2022 season, there will be 27 teams competing in an Eastern and Western Conference as well. This is the league that I've been playing in for the last few years, and I will once again be playing with the Charleston Battery. The average attendance in the USL Championship last year was 4,300 fans per game, and players can expect to make anywhere from a minimum of $27,000 upwards to about $100,000, maybe just over $100,000 per year. Now, below the USL Championship, this is where it kind of gets a little confusing. In the third division, we have 3 completely separate leagues. We have the USL League One, we have the NISA, and we have the newly formed MLS Next Pro. The USL League One will have 11 teams competing in the 2022 season in one large nationwide conference. The average attendance for the 2021 season was 1,752 fans per game. And when it comes to salaries, it's kind of an open spectrum because there has not been a league minimum set yet. However, from my experience and talking to players that have been in the league or talking to players that will be going to that league next year, it's pretty on par with the USL Championship salaries, maybe just slightly lower across the board. The next league, NISA, will have 13 teams for the 2022 season, and once again will be competing in one large nationwide conference. The average attendance for the fall 2021 season in the NISA was 1,289 fans per game. Once again, there is no minimum salary for players in this league, but you can kind of expect players to make anywhere from $500 a month up to $3,000 a month, and there's definitely going to be players outside of the spectrum on both ends, but that's kind of like the range, which is pretty typical in the third division. That's pretty typical as well for the USL League One. And one big disclaimer about this, with the USL Championship, the USL League One, the NISA, and MLS Next Pro, I'm kind of just spitballing my best estimates from what I've heard, from my experience. This isn't concrete fact. The salaries are not released to the public, so this is kind of just all secondhand stuff, third-hand stuff. It's not directly statistical numbers, if that makes sense. Finally, the newly formed MLS Next Pro will have 21 teams competing in the 2022 season, split into an Eastern and Western Conference. This league is basically just the MLS Reserve League. All of the MLS 2 teams that were once competing in the USL Championship and the USL League One have moved over into this league for this 2022 season, with a few exceptions that are still playing in the USL. However, over the next year or two, they're all planning on moving over to the MLS Next Pro. Obviously, we don't have any attendance data because this is a newly formed league and there was no 2021 season, but we can expect these numbers to be very similar for MLS 2 teams that competed in the USL Championship or USL League One. And when it comes to player salaries, I honestly have zero clue. I have no idea what it's looking like. I've heard rumors, I've heard really positive rumors, and I've heard kind of negative rumors about the salary, but I don't feel comfortable putting out a number, even an estimation of the typical salary or the range yet. So those are the 5 different professional leagues and the 3 different tiers that are officially sanctioned as professional by the U.S. Soccer Federation. Outside of that, there still are other professional teams and other professional leagues, but they're not sanctioned by the USSF. For example, there's teams in the UPSL and teams in the NPSL that will give their players housing, give their players food, give their players money, a contract, but it really just varies so much from team to team and from even different conferences to conference that it's really hard to kind of pin down an estimate, but majority of teams there don't pay their players. There's also professional indoor leagues like the Major Arena Soccer League and the National Indoor Soccer League that have players on professional contracts and are considered professional teams. The players that I know that are competing in those leagues talk about pretty similar contracts to what players make in the 3rd division here in America. But again, it just varies so much from league to league, team to team, even player to player. It's really hard to pin down. So anyway, that is what professional footy looks like here in America. Compared to Europe and other countries, around the world, we are in our infancy. Even the MLS, which has been our most stable league, has only been around for like 26 years. I'm older than the MLS, which is kind of funny to think about. So hopefully over the next 5 or 10 years, we start to lock down this pyramid and we start to have a little bit more stability, and maybe we can have a little bit of promotion relegation between the leagues. Hopefully one day. I just hope that it can just be implemented successfully. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. I'll probably be back next year with a newly updated video for 2023. But hopefully not. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, guys. Peace.
Now, that video was brought to us by Matt Sheldon and Become Elite, and basically described the USA soccer pyramid streamlining. Now, the phrase he kept talking about, relegation, if you're unfamiliar with that, is in most leagues outside of the United States, they do relegation, which means the bottom 3 teams in the league will go down to the next lowest league, and then the top 3 teams in the league underneath them will come up. So say, for example, in this soccer pyramid, if relegation was implemented in the United States, so the bottom 3 teams in Major League Soccer will go down to the USL Championship, and the top 3 teams in the USL Championship will come up to the MLS. That's important because obviously you get more market share and television revenues from being in the MLS. So it'd be very imperative to increase the style of play and score points so you're not relegated. So a lot of people feel like relegation and promotion gives teams a sense of urgency so they don't coast or they don't feel comfortable sitting in the league. However, in the United States, that's a new concept, and a lot of owners don't want a chance to go down to a lesser league where they make less money. So we'll see if that's being brought in the near future. Once again, a streamlined USA professional soccer pyramid can only mean good things for the future of the sport in the United States. Today's youth have amazing new opportunities to pursue professional and semi-pro soccer as more and more high schools as well as middle schools and youth organizations are adding the game. As momentum builds and the academy programs grow, these opportunities expand even further for younger and younger players. In the mid-2000s, professional teams begin to add under 23 development sides for the first time ever in this country. This something, again, was prevalent everywhere else in the world where you have a main team, under 23 team, under 18, under 15, etc. In 2018, the USL League Two was created as a pool where elite college players and standout high school players can be targeted for future MLS stardom. So this is like the G League in a sense. Since then, the USL Academy and Super Y League have formed along with MLS Next. Now, through separate entities, all three leagues are dedicated to developing future professional soccer players and enhancing the quality of youth soccer in communities nationwide. Henceforth, the formation of this next picture we'll be discussing is MLS Next Pro. We would then get, if you look at the picture, we're talking about the MLS ecosystem. So it starts with MLS, and then you got the Next Pro, which was launched in 2022, which is like the second tier teams. So you'll have Chicago Fire 2, LA Galaxy 2, etc. And then you got MLS Next, which was basically the youth academies. So now we're going to watch a video on TFC football to kind of break this down even further.
MLS Next Pro. MLS Next Pro has been the talk of the town nowadays. Football fans, especially American fans, are very eager to know what this is and how it will be played, and many other questions related to this new league. Here we will explain it by cracking this topic into different parts, and we will cover everything you need to know about it. Number 1. What is MLS Next Pro? The United States and Canada have started this league, which is affiliated with Major League Soccer. It is a men's professional soccer league and will be launched in 2022. MLS Next Pro will have 21 teams, and 20 of them are the reserve sides of the teams from the MLS. However, there is one independent club, Rochester, New York FC. This league will play its role as a third-tier league in the United States Soccer League system. Thus, its main focus will be on the upbringing of the new talent. We can also say that it will serve as an academy for the future stars of American soccer. Number 2. History and what is its purpose? On the 21st of June 2021, Major League Soccer's Federation announced the creation of the MLS Next Pro and published that it will start in 2022. MLS wants this league to be sanctioned and therefore are in talks with the United States Soccer Federation to make the MLS Next Pro a third division league. The division is currently occupied by USL League One, and it will be one level below the USL Championship. One of the main purposes of MLS Next Pro is the upbringing of talent to rival European football. Today, MLS is quite popular in Europe too, unlike a few decades ago, when only European football was watched all over the world. MLS Next Pro focuses on bringing the best of the youth and putting them outside their comfort zone, and it will eventually help the main MLS in the future, and will also increase the competition of the league. Europe has produced many great talents. Currently, some of the best American talents are also making their name in European football, like Pulisic, Dest, and many more. So it will be interesting to see what the future holds for this new project and how it will transform the future of soccer in America. Number 3. Fixtures and format. The first match will be played on the 26th of March, and then the league will officially start. Each team will play a total of 24 games, 12 home games and 12 away games. The group is also divided into Eastern and Western conferences, which are further divided into 2 divisions. The names of these divisions are Frontier Division, Pacific Division, Northeast Division, and Central Division. 4 teams from each conference will qualify for the MLS Next Pro playoffs. Number 4. What to expect? There is no doubt this league will have a big impact on the future of American soccer and will polish the talent. The fans are expecting a whole new experience, with new talented players coming forward, and if this league will be managed by professionals and hardworking people, then it can also help the USA's national team in winning the World Cup, because they are yet to win this prestigious cup.
That video was brought to us by TFC Football, and again describes the strategy of MLS Next Pro was basically is designed to be a feeder league for Major League Soccer. I foresee in the future that MLS Next Pro with the MLS name on it will probably purchase the other Division III teams, which is the NISL and USL League One, and just be the only third division team. So you'll go from MLS Next Pro, which is the grassroots level, and under that is MLS Next. Then you go to the USL, then Major League Soccer. So they'll have a pyramid to hopefully try to get the Pulisic's and the Dests and other Americans from playing in Europe and develop the American brand. Now, many over the years have compared lower tier American pro soccer to the Wild West, and that's not entirely off base as regards to the changing and the structure that lacks yearly. Some of the issues are long-term stability and structure, which make these operations very sporadic, and the leagues and teams always come and go. There were poachers and con men, alliances and feuds, prospectors and entrepreneurs, a lot of people linked trying to get into the soccer game on these low levels, most with bad intentions, and some linked to the powers that be and others who chafed against them. So that describes in regards to who was successful and who wasn't. The United States Soccer League, again, is a multi-division organization that's been in business since the late 80s and in some form or another had a varying degree of solidarity and success, but has been a big shot around the United States for the past few years. Now, with a lively landscape in soccer that's never been far from the truth, as they're shifting again. The USL's recent and dramatic growth was fueled in part by its partnership with Major League Soccer, whose clubs sent their reserve teams to compete in the USL's two pro leagues. So the reserve teams that originally were named two. So again, if it was the Portland Timbers, they have Portland Timbers 2, Chicago Fire 2, etc. Now the pair, they're going to separate ways, so that MLS's presence on the lower tier scene will loom larger. Now MLS Next Pro is the name of the new minor league unveiled Monday, which will become the third competitive sanctioned U.S. Soccer Federation league to occupy space in the third division pyramid, along with USL League One and NISA. Now, Next Pro will begin play next year with 21 members, including 20 of the MLS2 teams, 8 of which are transferring from USL Championship or League One. There also are additional 8 MLS2 entrants that will come aboard in 2023. Now, there's no plans to compete directly with the USL for teams or real estate. MLS Next Pro likely will leave a significant impact on development for young pros as well as coaches, not only to mention investors, broadcasters, and other stakeholders that they see this coming and rising with the MLS name will put money into it to see it elevate. Now, the inaugural MLS Next Pro season will include one independent club, which is Rochester FC. The rebranded Rochester Rhinos will also compete alongside the other 20 MLS2 sides and are a fitting symbol for the decades of flux, failure, and potential in these lower tiers of American soccer. Now, Rochester was considered an MLS expansion candidate in the late 90s, and you see how low they fell. The Rhinos were the only lower division team to lift the U.S. Open Cup following the 1996 launch of MLS Soccer, and they won 4 championships while competing in 5 different leagues over 2 years. So that was very impactful. So the U.S. Open Cup is like the League Cup in England, or the Premier League, the Championship, the third division, the fourth division, they all play together. And the only time in the United States that a team outside the MLS won the U.S. Open Cup or Champions Cup was when the Rhinos did it. So that shows you how they've been yo-yoing through this soccer pyramid. Now, after a 4-year hiatus, they rebrand and some investment from Leicester City, along with former England star Jamie Vardy. Rochester has returned and is finally a part of MLS in some type of way. Now, Rochester will be joined by teams fielded by the Chicago Fire, Colorado Rapids, Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati, and that FC stands for Football Club, FC Dallas, and they're coming from League One, the Houston Dynamo, Sporting Kansas City, who also from USL Championship, Inter Miami, Minnesota United, New England Revolution, 2 from League One, New York City FC, Orlando FC, the Philadelphia Union, Portland Timbers, Real Salt Lake, San Jose Earthquakes, the Seattle Sounders, along with St. Louis City, Toronto FC, and the Vancouver Whitecaps all sent teams to play in this new MLS Next Pro. Now, 8 more MLS 2 teams will be scheduled to sign on in 2023. Those teams include Atlanta United, Austin FC, Charlotte FC, DC United, the LA Galaxy, Los Angeles FC, Nashville SC, and the New York Red Bulls. Now, CF Montreal is still working through its schedule, hasn't really committed to a start date. No other independent teams were identified recently, but Commissioner Altchek said there's some preliminary and interesting conversations around potential independent teams that may be one a part of the league in 2023 moving forward. Now, at that same time, Altchek stressed that the MLS has no intention of returning to the days of the USL, NASL turf war, or similar conflicts that put stress on American lower tiers. The MLS is not targeting and does not plan on targeting any independent USL club for the MLS Next Pro membership. So basically what they're saying is the Next Pro teams are there. We're not going to target the USFL, either your championship or your third division. They can stay right there. Now they're saying that for now, but we see in college football, the word of the day is merger, merger, merger. Now next year's inaugural campaign will kick off in late March and see each of the 21 MLS Next Pro sides play 24 games, 12 home and 12 away. 8 will qualify for the playoffs, and the champion will be crowned before the MLS Cup playoffs begin. So similar like the USFL and the XFL, they're going to try to have soccer year-round to keep the interest going and provide greater access and talent in the pyramid. Now, specifics regarding player contracts, roster rules, and eligibility are still being finalized, and the operations and competition will run on a day-to-day basis by Senior VP Alice Curtis, who's a former New York Red Bulls and Toronto FC general manager. MLS Next Pro's third division sanction offers a lot of venue flexibility, and some clubs might opt to play under MLS stadiums, and other clubs could use elsewhere. If you look at these pictures right here, this is an example of this. So some clubs could select similar facilities in the same market, and again, others could look elsewhere. So right here, you see Seattle Sounders FC, who play in the Seattle Seahawks Stadium, and also you see the logo of their MLS Next team. Instead of having Seattle Sounders 2, they're called the Tacoma Defiance and play in Tacoma, Washington. So you have the flexibility to put your MLS 2 team in another city, in another stadium, or they can be with the parent team and just practice after them, etc. Now, these brands can reflect the parent club, again, or be distinct amongst themselves, such as the Tacoma Defiance. Now, the MLS ran a very low-key reserve league from 2005 to 2014, but it didn't create the success and or find them gems in the rough locally like other leagues do, henceforth the creation of MLS Next Pro in 2022. 2009-2010 hiatus was only part of the very Wild West feel of this project, as games were canceled and rescheduled constantly. Teams played different numbers of matches and rosters were constantly changing. Some players were getting called up, some players were getting cut, some players were getting signed by a third-level team in Europe somewhere, so there was always constant flux. However, by 2014, only 8 clubs were involved. Now, the MLS began addressing this issue starting the year before, when a partnership was merged with the USL that led to loan agreements, full affiliations, and then the entry of the MLS 2 teams into the competition. It also afforded MLS clubs a chance to field prospects and matches against experienced pros to test them. These games counted in the standings and were contested in real stadiums in front of fans, giving these players from lower divisions the chance to feel like a professional. Now, several MLS organizations like Dallas, the New York Red Bulls, and the Philadelphia Union found ways to use their second teams as a launch pad for future stars. MLS 2 sides were successful at the start, but as the USL evolved and as independent members displayed as greater traction in the pyramid, a parting of ways appeared inevitable. So most MLS 2 teams drew scant crowds by comparison versus the USL. You would think because it's MLS Next Pro, they would be second, but it's MLS USL, then MLS Next Pro is third. Now the two leagues' missions are no longer in alignment, and a challenge for the MLS Next Pro is to take what worked with the USL partnership, the stakes and the settings, and bring it into developing the game of these secondary teams from the MLS to develop national stars. Next, I'd like to go into the MLS and Next Pro and its rule differences. So on July 6th of 2022, the new rules for the league were introduced in the middle of its inaugural season. Now, these rules included off-field treatment meant to curb gamemanship. A lot of times in soccer, you see people fall with phantom injuries. Then they come with the magic spray. Then they're back again, and they can run around. So MLS Next Pro is trying to streamline the game, curb the gamemanship and time wasting, and have a new rule for red card suspensions as well. So in traditional soccer, if you get a red card, you're suspended the next game. However, or a red card results in 2 egregious foul or 2 yellow cards, which are called for fouls beyond the normal sense of a foul. Now, the suspension in MLS Pro for getting a red card or 2 yellow cards in the same game will be served against the same team he got the red card against. So instead of being suspended for the next game, he'll suspend it for the next game against that team. So what is that stopping? So instead of, if you were playing a good team and you want to send someone out as a goon per se to hurt a player, then they will be irrelevant against that team when you play them next versus the next game, which can be insignificant or against a low-level team. In this addition, the other rules that have been implemented, including all regular season draws, will be decided by PKs. Now, this was last used by the MLS in 1999 as normal penalty kicks instead of the North American Soccer League style where they had run-up penalties where you can run up and gain momentum. It was harder for the goalie to watch your hips and pick a side. Remember, this net is 16 feet long and 8 feet high. So the goalies have to watch hips in regards to which side they're going to dive to. Running up to the ball is very hard to do that. And they also want to look at the number of concussion substitutions that are used. Now, the MLS Next Pro League will run from spring to fall with the first season kicking off in March. Now, each team is going to play again 24 regular season games, which will be followed by the 18 playoff tournament with the league divided in the Eastern and Western conferences. So unlike Major League Soccer, MLS Next Pro does not feature a salary cap, and player contracts are held by the teams, not the league. So I have a wealthy team owner. I can pay more than other teams, and I won't have any cap restrictions on the league. So let's say Jerry Jones can literally buy the best team he wanted in MLS Next Pro. Other changes are the MLS Next Pro rosters can have the 24 professionals, not including players from their amateur academy with a maximum of 7 international players. Also, MLS Next Pro's club active roster can contain up to 35 players, all of whom are eligible for selection to each official match during the MLS Next Pro season. So you have a pool to choose from of 35 to pick your best 11 for that particular game. So now let's talk about our closing remarks. In closing, will the MLS reach out to Americans and particularly in urban areas, aka minorities, to grow this game? You see so many other countries reach out within the country to develop the game. And we've done that with all the other sports at some point in time: football, basketball, baseball. So why is soccer the last to hold out? The next question is to grow the game in the past in the United States, the USA went to Europe and South America to poach players. Again, why not go to the urban areas of the hood and introduce the game? You don't have to fly all the way across the world, and you would get stars that people know because they were born in the United States. Also, all top European clubs suffer when African players leave for their international duty, i.e. the Cup of African Nations or the World Cup. So again, by focusing your league on European players is not going to develop the sanctity of the league. I would like to reference the Japanese Baseball League, which is a homogenous baseball league. They do have outsiders, but they're only allowed a certain many per team. And the Japanese baseball players have to play in that league, I believe, 4 to 6 years before they can go to Major League Baseball. Again, keeping that sanctity of that league strong versus when you had the Negro League baseball teams where Jackie Robinson was like the 16th to 20th best player, but by him doing so well in Major League Baseball, instead of bringing the teams along, it was not assimilated, but everyone else thought Major League Baseball was better. Henceforth, the Negro Leagues are no more. Next, I'd like you to look at if Europe blossoms due to inclusion of players from African descent. I'm talking about the Premier League, all the European countries. If you look at the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, England, France, all the top powers, Italy even had players of African descent starting for them. Why does America choose not to promote the game in the African American and Hispanic community locally? That would also help with the Hispanic players if they're from Mexican descent, deciding whether they want to play for El Tri, which is the Mexican national team, or the United States. Next question I'd like to pose is, what if the Chicago Fire started an academy on the south side of Chicago and got all those kids to play soccer? Took some of those abandoned buildings and old infrastructure, made street soccer courts or full soccer pitches for the kids to play. What have you developed in your local areas? We can get the Silverback and the Sports 101 crew, SportsZone Chicago crew, to get some soccer games in and just check things out. Because, again, this is a growing sport, and if put in the community the right way, the kids will play it. Last but not least, if MLS Next Pro is designed to develop youth in the United States, will it develop all or continue to be inclusive of certain demographics? We see with soccer, it's a pay-to-play system. So if you can't play in these travel leagues, you're pretty much excluded. So MLS Next Pro, hopefully they will be inclusive to all youth, in particular the inner city, which drives the style of play and the amount of athleticism and the talent in every game, not only in the United States, but across the world. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sports 101 with me, Jamar Harp. You can follow me again on social media, on Twitter at Coach_Harp412, and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with Sports 101, Sean and Maya in the morning, and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, Instagram at SportsZone Chicago, and now you can go to your favorite smart device and download the SportsZone Chicago channel on Roku. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. I want everyone to have a great week, and those coming to the Omega Psi Phi National Conclave in Charlotte this weekend, please have a great time. We'll broadcast in next week from our new location in Louisiana, as I've just accepted a special teams analyst job with Grambling State University, so I will be moving soon. So we will now be broadcasting from Louisiana. And again, SportsZone Chicago family, feel free to come down and check out a game. We will see you next week at our normally scheduled time at a new location, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm gone.